Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, January 20th, 2023, and this week, Lawmakers join drivers, IDG fights deactivations, and Uber teams up with car makers. LegalRideshare breaks it down. And as always, from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by co-founder and lead attorney, Brian Greening. Brian, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Jared. Good to have another week with you.
Yeah, we got a few Chicago stories, so it hits home this week. So let's get right to it. So we're going to start with Monday. Colorado drivers are teaming up with lawmakers to fight for better working conditions. Now, this is from the Denver Post, and they reported, quote, rideshare and delivery drivers in Colorado and across the nation appear to be nearing a breaking point. We've talked about this before, but a recent study found that Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash drivers in the state made only $5.49 per hour after expenses. Now, this is 1/3 of Denver's minimum wage. Now, the good news is Stephanie Vigil, a Colorado Springs Democrat, in November, she won a seat in the House of Representatives, making for the first time, as she said, that a gig app driver was elected to the state legislature. So a member of the Colorado Independent Drivers United, which is a union that represents rideshare and delivery drivers, which she's part of, Vigil said it's time for Colorado to rethink how these tech companies are regulated. And she's already discussing, regulations and helping drivers out. And it's great coming from someone who she herself was a driver.
Yeah, it's about time that there's some representation in the gig economy, among the lawmaker community. We need somebody who has walked in their shoes, driven in their seats, who understands the plight of the rideshare driver and the gig worker. We've seen over the years that life has gotten harder and harder. When Uber and Lyft first came out, drivers were making a lot of money. It was a good job, and it was a job that you could feel comfortable raising a family, keeping a roof over your head. And now, as we see in Colorado and nationwide, drivers are barely making ends meet. I mean, how can you live on $5.49 per hour? There needs to be change, and I'm just really glad to see that there's somebody who can give the gig economy a voice in a powerful place.
Yeah, and we discussed it so many times before. It really is the grassroots where change is made. And this is a really good sign that, look, someone, like you said, is literally in the driver's seat who understands, who's now in a position of power to go, look, when Uber and Lyft say, no, drivers actually make $37 an hour, I can tell you personally that's completely false. And I think that's really what needs to happen around the country. And it's good it's starting here, which is awesome. All right, let's head off into Tuesday. Hertz and Uber dropped 25,000 EVs in Europe. Now, this is from Electric reported. Quote, Hertz and Uber announced today that they are expanding their partnership to electrify their fleets, and they are deploying 25,000 electric cars in Europe. Now, Hertz has confirmed that nearly 50,000 Uber drivers have already rented a Tesla through this program. Obviously, they're saying the deal will significantly increase the number of electric vehicles, which is hoping to bring them closer to their goal of only operating with EVs by the end of the decade. I will say it's this program, at least in the U.S. as well, and obviously in Europe, it seems to be benefiting the drivers. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, Brian, but it seems to be kind of a good thing.
I agree. I think it's good for everybody. The drivers are benefiting. They're having access to nice new vehicles that keep gas costs low, so they can spend more time on the road and fewer of their own dollars keeping their cars going. It's good for the passenger. I have personally enjoyed driving around in a Tesla multiple times. It's kind of fun. It's new, and it's good for the environment. So to see the rideshare companies putting their money where their mouth is, and putting more of these vehicles on the road, like I said, I think it's just a positive thing for all players involved.
What I've noticed, from a lot of these articles and with the regulations and sort of these demands. I have noticed when it comes to Uber dealing with Europe, they seem to take it a little bit more seriously, and they seem to always step up to the plate when they need to, even if they push back like they always do. I know we're trying to do something similar here, but you're not seeing it get as much ground or get much movement on the ground as in Europe. And again, I think it's truly just based on the regulations. I don't know if I'm incorrect on that, Brian. If you could chime in, let me know.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Europe has shown some teeth when it's come to regulating rideshare companies and gig companies. You saw London, took away Uber's license to operate for a period of time, and that really hurts. When the company loses access to a major market, it forces them to act right, and it also sets a precedent where the legislators can come in down the road and say, look, we've taken away your right to operate before and we'll do it again. So you better play ball. And I think showing a little teeth is a good thing. And it should be a playbook for lawmakers and governments here.
Right, which is good news. All right, we'll head off into Wednesday, probably the most talked about topic in rideshare and gig work, deactivations. And there's some good news about drivers in Chicago. Proposed ordinance in Chicago may give deactivated drivers a second chance. This is from Chicago Sun-Times. They reported, quote, drivers who work for Uber, Lyft, and other ride-hailing and food delivery apps would be guaranteed the right to appeal before being stripped of their livelihoods under a proposal which is championed by retiring alderman Susan Garza. She was the chairman of the City Council's Committee on Workforce Development. And this is also at the behest of the Independent Drivers Guild of Illinois, which we know very well. The proposed ordinance calls for creating a so-called driver resource center to give drivers a forum to present their side of the story. So basically, if the deactivation appeals panel rules a false accusation was made, well, then deactivated drivers would be compensated for their lost wages plus 9% interest. Now, we could talk about this topic all day, but definitely exciting, definitely good news for drivers.
Yeah, like you said, this is one of the top stories that we hear about. Drivers call us all the time asking about deactivations or complaining about false accusations, and all that people want is a chance to appeal. They want due process. They want their side of the story heard and taken seriously. And I really don't think that's too much to ask for. One of the issues with the independent contractor status is that you do give up a lot of employment rights. And we've seen the rideshare and gig companies take advantage of that when it comes to discharging drivers. Drivers put their whole lives into the hands of the rideshare companies, their livelihood, their ability to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. And then one day the rideshare company gets a complaint and totally pulls the rug out from underneath the driver, leaving them with zero recourse, no job, and really helpless. So what we're seeing in Chicago and what we've seen in other cities around the country is drivers are saying enough is enough. And we're seeing lawmakers agree. And with that comes progress. So hopefully in Chicago, our friends at IDG are able to get this pushed through and create a better, more fair work environment for gig workers.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope so, because there's nothing more devastating than when a driver does the right thing on a ride, has video proof to prove it, and then gets deactivated because that passenger was mad that the driver was following the rules. I mean, isn't that the whole point, is to be safe? And we hear this all the time. You've personally, Brian, have probably taken hundreds of these calls. And it's so hard to fight back against these gig companies. So for something like this to pass, we've been on Team IDG for a long time. So definitely hope something happens soon. And let's head off into Thursday. A little bit of a give and take here. Uber drivers in Tanzania got some unfortunate news. Now, this is from TechCrunch. They reported, quote, barely a year after Tanzania capped the commissions that e-hailing firms like Uber and Bolt charge their partners at 15%. The authority in charge has backtracked the order, basically taking away the driver's prospect of increasing the earnings. And it went back up to 25% as effective last Sunday, after they issued a notice on December 30th. So basically, Uber and its main rival in Europe, Bolt, halted some of their services in April last year, claiming that reducing the commission on partners would dent their earnings. But however, the reduced fee meant increased incomes for drivers who have in the past, like their counterparts in Kenya, protested poor earnings. So basically, having that lower percentage allowed drivers to potentially make more, and now they're saying, sorry, we're taking it back to how it used to be. Good luck.
Yeah, it's discouraging on many fronts. First, we want to see drivers keep more of the money. That goes without saying. The rideshare companies find many ways to profit, and the rideshare drivers need to, be able to make a living wage and survive. But I think the bigger point that I'm seeing here is just the inconsistency. Drivers have to know what they're going to be earning when they enter this market. And the fact that it keeps fluctuating, going from one percentage to another, and who knows what's going to happen next year or in the six months thereafter. How do you plan as a worker if you don't know what you're going to be able to earn? So I think this is just an example of how the rideshare companies continue to not be transparent in terms of what drivers are going to earn. Governments seem to be inconsistent in whether they're going to support the driver or the company. We just need some consistency. Tell people what they can count on so that they can survive.
I mean, that's a really good point. I never really thought of it. Even just I always looked at it as the sense of like, well, it's unfortunate this is happening, but you make a really good point of they can't even rely on what they're supposed to rely on as facts, and this is how it's going to be, and here's how the regulations are going to be. It's up and down. I can't imagine, you're a personal injury attorney. I can't imagine if you were dealing with a case and the insurance company just in the middle said, you know what, well, we changed our policy in the middle of this case. I have a feeling there'd be repercussions if they did that.
Yeah, there's most of these payment structures are based on contracts. There's terms of services that are signed off on the drivers, and they lay out how the terms are expected to work. And now all of a sudden those terms are going to be amended. So again, it goes back to the independent contractor status in a large part. If you're an independent contractor, the company can make up the rules, and they can change the terms of the agreement whenever they want. If there were better driver protections and perhaps an employment status, it would be much harder to do that. So Uber and Lyft and Bolt and whoever you want to talk about, the reason why they are able to change the rules as often as they can and to amend the policies and procedures solely to benefit their bottom line, it's because they put the drivers in an independent contractor status, and their entire business structure is based on that. So until that changes, until governments require certain levels of baseline protection, we're going to see more of this happening.
Right, which is just so unfortunate. And as we always say, it's just fight back. Fight back at any level you can. That seems to be the way to go. All right, so we're going to end this week on Friday here. Uber teams up with car makers to design rideshare-friendly EVs. Now, this is from Engadget. They've reported, quote, Uber's chief or CEO told guests at a Wall Street Journal event that his firm is now teaming up with car manufacturers to design EVs with ride-sharing and deliveries in mind. So his idea for rideshare cars will ideally have lower top speeds to reduce costs, as well as passenger seats that face each other to promote conversation. Delivery vehicles, meanwhile, might have 2 or 3 wheels to help navigate city streets, but loads of trunk space. Now, he didn't say which automakers were involved or really provide a timeline when these optimized EVs might be ready. All I can say is I think that's a better step than throwing autonomous vehicles on the road. That's my opinion.
I agree. I agree with that. We've talked about EVs earlier in the segment, and my same thoughts apply here. But I think that it's pretty cool that they're looking to design the vehicles to benefit the driver and to benefit the experience. So, to create more trunk space for delivery workers, great. To enhance the way that the vehicles are created or set up so that drivers have fewer expenses and passengers have a better experience, awesome. I think this is one of the times where we're seeing some of the greatest minds in tech use them for good. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, I was pretty skeptical when Uber and Lyft started announcing their rental programs, but I've talked to a lot of drivers and they're pretty happy with it. So this could kind of be, like you said, a way for them not to be destroying their own cars. It's optimized for what they're supposed to do. When we know with literally every quarter mile you go counts. So this could end up being a really good thing. So it's kind of exciting to see where this progresses. Now, again, we've seen in the past Uber launch things and pull them back, and he's also not giving any hard dates. So it's really just a matter of if he's really going to do it or not, really.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. We drivers rely on their cars. Their cars are their tools, and here's hoping that this is an opportunity to have the best tool out there to maximize earnings and keep people moving.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to give you the floor before we sign off here, Brian, as always.
Yeah, again, reminding everybody about Legal Rideshare. We are the first law firm in the United States that's entirely focused on gig worker accident and injury claims. If you're involved in an accident, please call us immediately so that we can help arm you with the information that you need to protect yourself, to recover lost wages, the medical expenses, pain and suffering, whatever other damage that you may sustain. Our consultations are always free, meaning it costs nothing to talk to me. And we are always available to help you out. So LegalRideshare.com, you can call us, email us, social media, you name it. We're happy to respond.
That we are. And as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.